I'm Curtis Bradley. I teach at Duke Law School. I teach and write in the areas of U.S. foreign relations law, international law, and the jurisdiction of the federal courts. And at Duke, I'm one of our co-directors of the International Law Center.
I'm Larry Helfer. I also teach at Duke Law. My areas of focus are international institutions, human rights, international intellectual property, international courts and tribunals. I co-direct the International Law Center with Kurt. I'm also a permanent visiting faculty member at iCourts, the Center for Excellence for the Study of International Courts at the University of Copenhagen.
I've been contributing writings to the journal since very early in my career, starting with book review essays and contributions to some of the symposiums the journal's held. And I've had the privilege for the last 10 years or so of being on the board of editors for the journal. I've long been attracted to the journal for a number of reasons. One, and when I published there, my writing seemed to reach audiences that are not reached necessarily by some of the other law reviews I publish in, both in terms of overseas audiences and also people who work in government. They often see things in AGIL that they wouldn't necessarily see in other publications. It's also been great to be on the board of editors for the journal. It's a terrific group of scholars, both from the U.S. and abroad, and so it's been a privilege to be able to work with them in helping the journal and in deciding on manuscripts and reviewing them.
So I first was exposed to the journal when I was in practice in New York, and I remember seeing all of the green issues lined up on the wall and working with the journal and learning from the various sections that were there. And I always wanted, it was a long-term aspiration to contribute something to the journal, which I was able to do over the course of time, starting with book reviews and international decisions, and then working up to lead articles. It's also been my privilege to be a member of the board of editors for 8 years, and I echo what Kurt said. I think it's a terrific group of scholars and a real way to influence the field of international law, and we're hoping to do more of that as editors-in-chief. Well, the American Journal of International Law has a very long history. It's been in publication for over 110 years, which makes it really a tremendous resource of long-standing scholarship from the early 20th century. And I think that's one difference, that history. I think it's also very much focused on trying to merge many of the latest trends, both in scholarship and what is happening in terms of real-world events with what is happening in the world of legal practice and government. And so in that sense, it's a very distinctive source for both professors, scholars from around the world, but also for anyone who's involved in the day-to-day practice of international law to learn what the latest trends actually are. I think it's also very distinctive that we've set up an online companion, AGIL Unbound, in the last few years, which has provided an opportunity for scholars who have not previously had a chance to publish in the journal to publish in its online companion and begin to develop an idea which they can develop further in more extensive scholarship over time. So we really view one of the distinctive features is having both a long-standing, very long-standing print edition, now complemented by an online edition that's really much more nimble and able to respond in closer to real time to current developments.
And I echo everything Larry just said. Certainly as compared to most of the law reviews in the United States that I often publish in, one thing that's distinctive for AGIL, of course, is that it has peer-reviewed selection of the manuscripts and then peered editing and feedback on the manuscripts, which can be invaluable for improving the drafts of papers. And even for the papers that it's not able to publish, the editors-in-chief of the journal provide constructive feedback on many of the manuscripts that they receive. And as we've started to do some of that work on the manuscripts, we often get appreciative notes from authors, even for the papers we're not able to select for publication, for the feedback that we're able to provide for them, and I think that's distinctive as compared to a lot of the other journals out there. And Larry also mentioned one of the most dynamic parts of the journal, the Agile Unbound, and I've had the privilege of helping to supervise that aspect of the journal for about a year now, and it allows us to have every few weeks or so a timely symposium of shorter essays on topics of general interest, and it also brings in many other authors, and over time some of those authors of course may end up publishing longer pieces with the journal as well, and so it's also a way to connect with authors from around the world to the journal. The final thing I would note that I think is not always well known is that the journal publishes a variety of different lengths of papers within the print journal. So it has the full-length articles, but it also has shorter essays and comments and current developments. And so there's an array of possibilities out there for authors who are working on different kinds of manuscripts.
Well, we have a very broad approach to the kinds of manuscripts that we publish. We're interested in different approaches in terms of international law theory, international law and international relations, empirical pieces that study how international institutions actually function within domestic legal systems as well as comparatively. So we're really quite open to a range of different perspectives. We certainly also want to attract a range of authors. It is the American Journal of International Law, but we're very conscious of the fact that we're focusing as well on events that are relevant to all regions of the world, and so we certainly welcome and look out for the opportunities for submissions from scholars from different parts of the world, including the developing world.
And ultimately, when we're looking at the manuscripts that come in, we're trying to find manuscripts on a variety of topics and using different methodologies that are likely to have a long-lasting impact. We're trying to forecast the articles that will still be discussed and relevant in the coming years, and so that'll be one of the things that we look for when we're selecting manuscripts for publication. It's one of the things the members of our board look to when they evaluate the publications. As Larry mentioned, we're open to a wide variety of subject matters and approaches to international law. We should also emphasize that we're quite interested in the area of foreign relations law. It has historically been one of the strength areas of the journal. It's a particular interest of mine, and so we're hoping that people who are writing in that area as well submit their work to the American Journal of International Law. We'd be very interested in seeing that. And we would encourage people to submit papers of different lengths. So we have the ability to publish the longer full-length articles in the journal as well as shorter pieces. And so if somebody has an idea that merits some shorter treatment, that would be perfectly fine. They should consider submitting that as an essay, and we would evaluate that as well.
The other thing I would just add is that we have an opportunity for some overlap between Agile and Agile Unbound. So in the past, we have often had one of the lead articles be the core for a symposium in which there are a series of online contributions commenting on and critiquing and extending the ideas in the lead article. And we think that's another way for authors who submit and are published in the journal to highlight their work and to increase its impact.
A few thoughts occur to me. One is we definitely would encourage authors to try to be as clear as possible about the thesis of their paper. It should be clear to a reader of whatever type of article it is, what claims the author is making pretty early in the paper, and why the article or paper is organized the way it is. And so we would encourage authors to do that. Kind of related to that, I often advise more junior scholars when they're writing papers early in their career to rewrite their introduction to their paper numerous times, because in some ways that should be the last part of the paper you finish as an author, because you're really learning as you're writing an extended treatment in a paper, and then the introduction should ultimately reflect what you've learned and why the paper is proceeding the way it is. And of course, another thing I encourage junior scholars to do is go out of their way to reach out to as many colleagues and other scholars in the field to try to get feedback on their drafts. And the more they can do that before they would submit to a journal, the better shape the paper is likely to be in. And so those are a few tips that I would give to people who are thinking about submitting.
I think those are all excellent suggestions. I would also add that if you have an idea that it may not yet be fully developed for a lead article or an essay, one possibility is to think about an online submission to AGIL Unbound, which are no more than 3,000 words. That often allows you at a fairly low cost to test out some ideas in a context in which you will get a publication that appears and can be downloaded and looks just like AGIL. Indeed, is an integral part of AGIL, but it allows you to do something to try to claim a new idea or a new topic as your own, as something you're contributing to, and that doesn't preclude you from developing it further into a piece of a more extensive treatment of the topic. The other thing too, on top of what Kurt says, we do try, because we are a double-blind peer review journal, for those manuscripts that go through a board review. We give extensive comments to authors and suggestions for improvement, and work closely with them so that the final product that is published is the best that it can be.
One of our immediate goals is to continue on the hard work of our predecessors, Jose Alvarez and Benedict Kingsbury, in ensuring that the journal is published on time. And they've made great progress during their tenure as editors-in-chief towards that goal, and we intend to complete that progress and in the near future have the journal publish in the month that's listed on the issue of the journal. And we think that will have many advantages, one of which is it makes the journal an even more attractive place to publish in, knowing that your article or essay will come out in a very timely way. And so we're taking a variety of steps with Cambridge Press to ensure that this happens. Another immediate goal that Larry and I have is to try to broaden the pool of submissions that we're receiving. And so we're doing a lot of outreach to remind people of the many benefits of publishing with the American Journal of International Law, and highlighting the different types of content that we're looking for, so that authors in the US and around the world are thinking about the journal when they're working on their papers, and so that we see a broad array of manuscripts and we can choose from those manuscripts and have a lot of content in the journal. And I think we'll be really emphasizing that outreach for the journal in the coming years in which we're editors-in-chief. One more long-term issue, and maybe Larry has thoughts about this because we're going to start exploring it with our board, is to try to get a better sense as editors-in-chief of how the journal is read in this day and age, when obviously people consume information differently than they might have in the past. And as part of that, trying to think about the optimal allocation of the print elements of our journal and the online elements. One of the big successes in recent years of the journal has been its online companion, AGIL Unbound, and there might be ways to continue utilizing that online component in ways that we're not currently doing. And maybe that would involve some rethinking of precisely what we're offering in the print version versus the online components to make sure that both versions are meeting the needs and interests of our readers. And so we're going to be studying that issue pretty closely with our board in the coming years.
I would just add two things, just first picking up where Kurt left off. I think it is important to think about how the online and print components relate to each other. There are a number of ways in which they really are integrated. I mentioned before the symposia around online around a lead article in the print journal. Another way in which that's happening is First View. So Cambridge has made it possible for lead articles and other content in the journal to appear online before they appear in the print edition, if they are ready. So again, that kind of is already blurring the boundaries between the two, and I think there will be other opportunities for synergies particularly to the extent we're trying to respond to a very fast changing world in which things that are relevant to international law institutions can come up very quickly and would benefit from the kind of wisdom and insight that the American Society of International Law can bring to bear on these sorts of topics. The other thing I would say specifically to American authors, there's a very distinctive way in which U.S. legal scholarship gets produced and published because we have a very long tradition in U.S. law schools of student-edited law reviews and the possibility for submitting to multiple journals at the same time. That's quite a surprise to our colleagues outside of the United States and indeed to our colleagues in the United States outside of law. And one of the things Kurt and I would like to be able to do is we're aware of the pressures that can produce and the challenges for a peer-reviewed journal like AGIL, but we're committed to trying whenever we can, whenever reasonably possible, to working with authors within an expedited time frame so that we can review manuscripts and be competitive with the top American law journals in the field for pieces that relate to international law or foreign relations law.
And one other thing I might add is one of the most enjoyable aspects of becoming the editor-in-chief that I'm looking forward to is working with Larry. Larry and I are colleagues at Duke. Our offices are next to each other. I think we complement each other very well. This is a challenging service to help lead the journal, but because we work together so well, I think it's going to be fun. And I think our ability to brainstorm between the two of us, I think, will be more than the sum of its parts, and so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I agree completely.